I just want to give you glimpses into each of these 5. We'll go more in depth tomorrow morning. So this is why I call it a tour. All I want you to do for the next half hour is suspend disbelief. Okay? What I mean by that is this. Sometimes you want to move to, well, will that work? Not yet. Tomorrow, yes. Today is imagine the possibilities. Okay? Tomorrow you could say, this is best for us. Okay, that's great. I can't make that. All I can do is lay out the kind of the banquet and say, here's the vision, but what do you want to draw for your own church? That's the contextual part of this. So nothing about this is prescriptive. It's descriptive. Okay? And you'll figure out the direction you want to take it. I think, for me, I think this is a systemic response to systemic big adaptive challenges. So for me, I look at the ecosystem and I think to myself, this is going to strengthen the culture of our church. And it's going to bring the generations together in one place. Secondly, it's going to go after our 10 decades of diversity. Now, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, we can barely maintain what we have going now. I know. That's why we're going to be imaginative and creative about how we do it. But for me, the imperative of doing lifelong faith formation is just critical. But not alone, knowing that I'm going to connect the generations as well as address their unique needs. We have to move home in intentional ways because that's where transmission takes place. The stronger our families and all their different varieties and shapes and forms, the stronger families, the more they're practicing and sharing faith at home, the stronger our church community is. And so how do congregations equip parents, grandparents, and families for faith practice? And how do we strengthen the parent people? Don't worry about having any competition. There's nobody else who's going to fight you to work with families. It's sad though, but it's true. And then the missional piece is how we broaden our church campus. A wonderful book. Keith Anderson, a Lutheran pastor, actually not far from here in Pennsylvania, has written a wonderful book for church publishing called The Digital Cathedral. And it's all about taking cathedral imagery into the 21st century, complete with a schematic of the Canterbury Cathedral, which he uses as his imagery. It's fascinating. But how to think cathedral-like, not parish-like. Make the campus bigger, which is missional faith formation. How do we broaden our campus? And then how do we use online places where people are already and digital tools to enable this to happen? That's a big part of making this new system work. In a sense, that's the 21st century part of this. So, I'm gonna do examples, and then I'll come back and flesh out that tomorrow. So, one of the things that's really important is how is faith formed? How does faith grow? And we now know, with lots of wonderful research studies and lots of experience, that the more we do of these things at every stage of the life cycle, at home and in the congregation at church, the more these things happen, the more people are on a trajectory towards faith practice, lifelong faith growth. And so none of that's a surprise to you. But it's the fact that we do all those things and we make available all of those. So how do we draw this out of our church community? Build caring relationships. Celebrate rituals and milestones throughout life. Celebrate the church year seasons. Learn the tradition in new ways. Praying and spiritual formation, reading the Bible, serving, working for justice, caring for creation, worshiping. All of those are the core factors that promote lifelong faith growth. And part of our task will be, how do we become much more intentional about that in the church community, in the home community, and as we expand our campus out into people's daily lives? So in the intergenerational piece, for me, this is the center of this whole ecosystem, in the sense it's where all the ages come together, and the life and events of church are the center of this model. And so the best way to say it is, let me hit this. These 5 different aspects of intergenerationality. Every church here is intergenerational, but only some churches are intentionally intergenerational. I'll give you a great story. A church I worked with, almost 15 years ago. Part of a big national project where we help churches develop intergenerational faith formation. Bring all the ages together, learn together, grow together, pray together, celebrate together. Well, they've been doing intergenerational learning monthly during the year for 13 years. This past spring, they did their first, and they do mission trips, youth mission trips, sometimes adults and youth on a mission trip. They did their first intergenerational mission trip. The youngest was 10 years old, the oldest was 82 years old. And they went to, I forget which Central American country. Costa Rica. I don't think that was the right country, but pretend. It was in Central America. I just can't remember which one they told me it was. And which they had a relationship with. They had done international mission trips, et cetera. So, I don't know, 30, 40 of them went on mission together. To a person, they came back and talked about the fact it was the most transformative thing they had ever done at St. Elizabeth of Hungary. The most transformative for everybody, the 10-year-old and the 82-year-old and everybody in between. Mission trips are transformative in and of themselves, but the intergenerationality and then how they connected with that intergenerationality in Costa Rica, and that combination was transformative. And I thought, that's the genius of intergenerational community and faith formation. And it's available to every one of the churches here because you get the people, so to speak, for free. You don't get intergenerational for free, but the people are there. Many of you may be familiar with a group called Road Scholar. They used to be Elder Hostel, okay? And they were programs for old people who were in good shape physically. You know, it's rich, a lot more outdoor rigorous programs. Well, the old people now are 55 and over. Because they adapted to the longer life cycle, and these baby boomers who want to stay active, learning, growing. You know, their fastest growing program has nothing to do with older people or mature adults. The fastest growing program is grandparents with grandchildren 10 years and over. If you should have just had a V8 moment. Because what your church has is grandparents and 10-year-olds. You may not have the parents, but you got the kids. This is a made-for intergenerational experience for churches. What's not to like? Intergenerationality. How do we become intentional about caring and weaving that into the fabric of everything we do? Building relationships. Mentoring. I was with a church recently that had just every young person in that church has an older member of the church who prays for them every single day. This is like, of course. And what happened after 3 months of this, the high school kids said, we want to meet these people who are praying for us. And all of a sudden, what started out as a more abstract, mystical, became embodied. Simple stuff. We're talking about simple, intentional practices. Perhaps not your church, but lots of churches still segregate ages at worship. Well, when do you actually ever graduate to the Sunday worship experience? Hopefully before you decide to leave church. But thinking intergenerational about consciously intergenerational in our worship life, in the way in which we celebrate milestones and rituals and sacraments, where everybody gathers together and everybody benefits. And the church year feasts and seasons, one of the gifts of being a liturgical church is how we tell time and mark time through the year. Feasts and seasons are simply great intergenerational experiences that also transfer to the home really well. So sometimes I'm working with churches, and I just want to shake them a bit and say, use what you have. These are your great assets. Make them more intentionally intergenerational so that people are learning and growing together through the natural course of the church's life. Learning, I could do a whole day just on intergenerational learning programs and bringing that in, and we can talk more about that tomorrow if that pops on people's plans. But how to not only bring the generations together. I work with churches that have like 3 people in grade 1 Sunday school, 10 in grade 2, nobody in grade 3, bad year. And I say, why are you spending all that energy when you could spend the same amount of energy and bring all the generations together and get a forfer? You get parents, grandparents, the kids, the teens, all under one umbrella, and you get adult faith formation for free. That thinking through possibilities for faith formation, and then all those adults who are role models for the young and vice versa. Praying, being intentional about all of our prayer experiences, and I'll give you an example of intergenerational service, but that was a global thing. Just churches that do intergenerational service days throughout the year where everybody has something to contribute. And it's a great missional activity because there's nothing, service is a great equalizer in terms of mission. So just being more intentional about our intergenerational community and using our great assets already present there to connect everybody. Okay. Then to be much more intentional about across the lifespan. So as maybe it popped on your analysis, how do we address the whole scope of age group or age life stage faith formation? And I think, again, one of the enablers for making a lot of this happen will be the ability to use digital tools, digital resources that reach people and connect with people both on campus and off campus. Family faith formation. I identified these big 5. So in terms of how do we nurture family faith, especially in those first 2 decades of life, and especially in those first 5 or 6 years of life. It's always so interesting to me that at the most critical time in a family's life in terms of faith traditions and practice and forming family, the 0 to 6-year-old, churches are often the most absent. Sunday school starts at grade 1. And so it's so interesting to me that we're still not focused in on how do we help the family at home, even though we have such a little slice of their attention at church. And so how do we nurture family faith at home through those 8 faith-forming processes? In other words, these are not only what the church community does, it's what we want to develop the capability and capacity of families to do this at home. Because the stronger the home as a center of faith formation is, the stronger our communities are. Okay? And this isn't a case where people aren't open to this. It's not, I always tell churches, it's not that we have tried this and it's failed. We simply haven't tried it. We just haven't tried it. So if parents wouldn't be interested in that, you sure about that? Because everything I know is that they're very interested in that. When we see ourselves from the congregational side as being of service to families, it changes the whole dynamic. See, in most places, church family is supposed to be in service to us. Meet our schedules, meet our calendar, do our things. And I want to reverse that and say we're in service to families. And so in all their diversity and the rest, how do we serve families? And so when I'm thinking about families, I'm thinking we want to help them grow, and we want to start really young, like prenatal, and helping them do these things. Because if you start a family, if you start out right, that's a trajectory for the rest of your life. And we know that's critical. We absolutely know that's critical. And it happens at home, not at church. So how does church support the home? How do we build strong families? The Search Institute in Minneapolis, Minnesota, has done extensive research on how you grow strong families through family assets. And they're these big 5: relationships, routines. It's so amazing how spiritual this list is when you look at it. Expectations, addressing challenges, and relating to people in the community. And so there's 24 of these assets. The more stronger and healthier families are, and the more we resource towards that, again, our campus gets bigger. And then 3 in particular about parents. How do we nurture the faith, the parents? Because if the big people are growing, we know the little people are going to be growing. And when I say parents/grandparents, parenting for faith growth, how do you share faith? How do you read a Bible story? See, we used to assume people already had that, like it was genetic. And you know it's not. You know it's not. Like when the kids drop in for First Communion because Grandma and Grandpa brought them, and you start doing some really basics of the faith, you realize, oh my God, they just don't have. So we don't need to assume. How do we teach parents and grandparents? I mean, if every church here simply helped grandparents be faith formers of their grandchildren, whether they live next door or they live across the world, it no longer makes a difference, by the way. My 2 grandsons are in North Carolina. I'm in Connecticut. We see them pretty much every 2 months or so. And in between is FaceTime and keeping up with baseball and all the other activities that are going on. So we're connected. So it's one seamless kind of thing. Immersed for a weekend and then recovering for 2 months. And sustained by the web conferencing. In this case, it's FaceTime. It could be Skype. It could be any of those. And then parent education. Where do parents develop the skills, the competencies to be effective parents? You don't get that genetically. But I would say in your community, if you thought about this, how you could be in service to parents and families, you won't have a lot of competition, I'll tell you that much. No one's going to be fighting over this. But most of our churches rely on the bedrock of strong families. Part of the ecosystem is build it. Don't assume it. Help. Be a resource. The missional piece has 2 aspects to it. How do we expand and extend our presence out to where people are? Outreach, connection, relation building. You do that in a variety of ways. From moving worship out into the community, opening programs to everyone, providing life skills. This is bountiful. But this is moving church from here out there. I was doing a presentation for the New England Synod, Lutheran ELCA Synod, and the bishop of the Synod did the first hour on trends in the Synod. And one of the first questions he got from people was, Bishop, you've been talking about missional. He says, where is missional? And he got up off his stool, and he walked to the window, and he pulled the drape back, and he said, right there, pointing across the street to the neighborhood. Like, expand the size of the campus. If people aren't coming, we have to get going. We have to be in their world before they'll ever think about being in our world. And then how do we provide pathways for people who are interested, who have been made relationship and contact with, to encounter Jesus, to encounter Christianity, to think about being active in a church? What's the pathways? The church has always had the catechumenal process for 20 centuries of a pathway from outside and unbelief to belief and inside. What are some of those pathways in the 21st century? Every church needs those. And then lastly, I think we need to be online and digitally enabled. And for me, this is blending gathered with online learning environments, both, not either or, and then linking intergenerational peer experiences, daily home life. using the ability of the digital. And so there were so many questions around that. I think we now have the abundance of resources. That's not a problem at all. We've got tons of digital resources and digital tools. We need the strategies to connect those to the lives of people. So we can engage people with all kinds of faith-forming content in ways we could have imagined 7 years ago, 5 years ago. We could extend everything we do with people at church out into their daily life. I'm going to show you a couple of examples just to kind of tease your thought more tomorrow morning. To connect faith formation in a gathered setting with an online setting in one package. In a school setting, they would call that flipping the classroom. And to offer a variety of online faith formation content and courses for self-study. Every church here could start adult faith formation next Friday, if you wanted to. Just with the vast amount of online, that's all digital. Courses on just about everything and anything that you could offer your adults who do not have time to go find it, even the ones who are actively engaged. They're not going to go searching it out. They're going to want to go to trusted content you provided for them in an online platform for adult faith formation. And so when you think about 10 decades of life, I think about these and say, I can be lifelong faith formation. I don't have to be nailed down to the walls of to the floor of the church. And I'm not going to be limited by the typical excuse I get all the time. We don't have enough time to do adult faith formation. And my point is you have enough time not to do adult faith formation. It's just not an option. But up to this point, it was hard for me to say, here's how you do it without adding more building, staff, nights, programs. Well, now we have ways of doing it that we couldn't have imagined 5 years ago. And for all those who are mired in child protection forms and permission slips and the rest, work with adults, you don't need any of that stuff. And they even have money and they have cars. When's the last time a third grader brought money or a car? So we can do all kinds of marvelous strategies. We'll go more in depth on this, more at the design workshop in August. But enough to say that there's plenty of online content. This is Vibrant Faith at Home from Vibrant Faith. 700 plus faith-forming activities. They're all free. Children and parents, teens, young adults, adults. It's just Vibrant Faith at Home. It's on the top of the handout, vibrantfaithathome.org. Building websites and platforms for that. I'll share more with this tomorrow about how to build an online platform for faith formation. Not a church website with information in Mass Times, but a faith formation learning interactive site that people can learn and access and grow with. And churches are building those. This is a preschool families page of content that simply extended what people were doing with this first church in Simsbury, Connecticut, small church, taking preschool, Sunday school, and extending it for the whole month. This is a month. This was May's online curriculum. May was Our Father month, and all these resources related to the Our Father, none of which the coordinator actually created. She simply curated great content. This is a little church in the middle of Nebraska. When I say little, I mean we're more people here than the town. Every Sunday, the pastor, Breen does, extends Sunday morning into people's daily lives. Simple stuff. Chuck Knows Church, kind of a hip video. This comes from Agnew's Day, day.org. It's clever. Every week it's something new. It's free. She has a devotion for adults, which she simply links to. She doesn't write that one. For youth, the same thing. And she writes a family section every week of activities. And then her sermon's also online. That's on a separate page. So here's some content. Doesn't replace Sunday. But if you're on vacation this week and you missed it, we got it. And it extends the campus into people's daily and home life. And you could watch this waiting for kids at soccer practice. Ideally, not on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock when worship is. But even if it was, It's still contact. And it's more content they had last week when you didn't have this up. This is their follow-up to Vacation Bible School, which they did the week of June 7th. Taking Vacation Bible School home. The best thing about Vacation Bible School, it's 5 days. The worst thing about Vacation Bible School, it's 5 days. And then you wait 51 weeks for the next edition. Now you don't have to. She can resource these families every week, every month with new content that deepens VBS. What's not to like about the digital world? So part of what we're doing is reimagining church and faith formation to offer a wide variety of engaging, interactive content experiences in online and physical settings. Part of the struggle for all of us, it was for me as well, is to keep these all connected. It's not either or, it's both and. It's not either or, it's both and. Your toolkit just got bigger by a lot. The ways of reaching and engaging people with the good news just got bigger, a lot bigger. Your ways of staying in relationship with people and building contact with others just got a lot bigger. And it couldn't have come at a better time. I don't mind God giving us big challenges. But if God's not up to the task of giving us some abundance to work with, then, that's just frustration. We have big adaptive challenges, and we have an abundance of content and experiences that we now have access to, and most of it is free. That's one great God. We can now offer content experiences. So first is variety, a lot of variety, which you could never do just here. It's like what Netflix can do in the video world that the old CBS, ABC, and NBC could not do, which is what? It's like, oh my God, look at all the stuff. And I don't need to be home at 9 o'clock to see something. In fact, I could see all of it at the same time. And then go in for eye surgery. But the whole shift is that it used to be, now any application to church is purely coincidental. The big 3, 4 networks programmed their content, and you had to be there when it played. This is the pre-DVR world. The Netflix world is, live your life, we don't care, we're open 24/7, and when you want to, access us, and you make the choice, not us. Did I mention that was a shift? So who do you want to be? ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, or Netflix? Who do you want to be? Not who I want to be. I made my choice 5 years ago. Who do you want to be? And I want to be to offer content experiences to respond to diverse needs. We can do that. To personalize and customize faith formation in ways we never imagined 5 or 10 years ago. Because we can do that. We can address niche needs. Remember in the old model, one size fits all, even if it didn't fit you. We still do that with worship. I'm a Roman Catholic. God forbid you change a word. Oh my God. Somebody visits you from Rome the next day. It's true. It's worse than putting a Disney movie on your website. Disney takes 2 days to get to you. Never thinking about how do we personalize and customize worship so it addresses all that generational diversity, religious diversity. You can do it today. You can absolutely do it. All those tools are in your hands. You have them right now. And third, how do we enable congregations to be centers for learning and faith growth? Centers for that. Utilizing the best of the technologies to provide an abundance of meaningful and engaging faith-forming experiences for everybody. If you started thinking of yourself as a center of learning, mission, faith formation, and serving the wider community, that whole ecosystem starts to make a lot of sense. So far, so good? That's what you assessed when you did the Congregational Assessment Guide. This is simply the back story.